Hello everyone, welcome to Sarat Chandra IAS Academy, where your dreams are our mission. This is Yatharth here. So today we'll be discussing economy, and we'll be discussing the most important concepts such as the deadweight loss, Gini coefficient, multiplier effect, welfare losses, and so on. And this will all be done in the present context of the debate of inequality versus the economic growth. Okay, let's start the lecture. We'll also be understanding various different graphs like these. Okay, so let's see where is the origin of this debate. So this is Rahul Gandhi. Before elections, he said that if they come to power, the India bloc, they'll be doing a redistribution of the wealth. Redistribution of the wealth. Also, of course, via a wealth tax or some sort of tax regime. Okay. Second thing, they said they will be curtailing the monopoly in the market and increasing competitiveness. So this is one debate. In the rebuttal, Prime Minister Modi said that this will be limiting the growth of Indian economy. Limiting the growth of Indian economy. And this will also deter investors from investments. Not only this, it will also stop the private enterprises to create jobs. All right, or expand their business in India. Okay, so this is, let's say, side A. This is, let's say, side B. So there is a debate between these two things. Okay, one is our inequality, the present inequality, and second thing is the economic growth. So this is a debate. How to balance this debate? So that we need to understand. Okay, so let's first understand what is inequality. Inequality. Okay, that means the absence of equality or the reduction in inequality. So this can be explained by a simple thing known as the Gini coefficient. Okay, so here we see a graph. Let's see what is Gini coefficient. We have already seen it. Well, we'll revise it here. The formula is A upon A plus B. Or basically, how much graph this is. How much area under graph this is. Okay, we'll understand via two lines. I'll make one more line here. Okay, if the Gini coefficient was little bit more, then it will look like this. Okay, it will look like this. So this we'll understand. What does it mean? Okay, so simply we have two axes. This is our y-axis. This is our x-axis. So on x-axis, what we see? The cumulative percent of the population. So just call it the population. And here we see on y-axis the income. What do we see? Income. So in the graph number 1, if we make a perfectly equal economic society, so what to do we come at? Let's say we plot a graph here, plot a point here at 50%. So in a perfectly equal economic scenario, we will see that 50% of the people have 50% of the wealth. 50% of the people have 50% of the wealth. That means it is in equilibrium. The income versus population is in equilibrium. All right, now let's talk about the Gini coefficient graph or an unequal society. Let's come here. Okay, so what do we see here? That 20% of the people, 20% of the income, is in hands of 40% of the people. That means population or people exceed the income. That means more people are poor. Okay, 40% of the people have very little income. 20% of the income. That means rest of the people, 60% of these people have 80% of the income. Okay, so we see here that 20% of the people have the 40% of the people have 20% of the income. Okay, now if let's say this society was even more unequal, let's say this line number second. So what do we see? That these graph, this 40% people have even lesser income here. Okay, only 15% income here or even 10% income here. So 10% income is in hands of 40% people. So more the unequal a society is, the bigger this area will be. The bigger this A area will be. Okay, so this is the formula A upon A plus B. So bigger the A, more the Gini coefficient. Okay, so this represents in inequality. Inequality basically means how much income is in the hands of how many people. Okay, so now let's see that more unequal or unequal under the British Raj than the British Raj. That means even 200 years before we had less inequality. So let's see what it is wanting to say, that India's top 1% control more of the national income than it did under the British rule, a new study shows. So what does this say? Share of the national income in percentage of the top 1% people, let's say. Okay, so it fell during this time. We can see a fall during this time, 1982 and so on. And 1922, even under the British Raj, it was around 12.5%. Now it has exceeded 22.5%. 22.5%. So we are calling that India's top 1% people have this much of income. Okay, so this is what that means. Inequality has risen. Inequality has risen. Although it sporadically rose, let's say here in 1937 and so on. But these income levels to the top 1% are concerning. They have so much wealth, more than the normal people. So what does it lead to? What does it mean when inequality is so much? Inequality is so much. What happens? So some people say that inequality harms the democratic process. Inequality harms the democracy. This is the first thing. So we talked about this. Okay, recently we saw the history of donations coming in the light. Okay, Supreme Court banned this scheme where donations were made to parties, anonymous donations. Okay, so of course these donations were made by rich people, wealthy people, and that may have been in the favor of them. So this harms the democracy. That is the first thing. Second thing, they say that inequality also harms the growth of the economy. On the other hand, some also say that instead of harming the economy, harming the growth of the economy, it actually increases the growth of the economy. Okay, it increases the entrepreneurship, it increases the investments, it increases the employment, it increases the welfare of people. So let us see what is the truth behind this. Okay, let's come here. First of all, let us see that even in the sense that inequality has risen, we can see the India's GDP. Okay, here it has also risen from 1980, 1990, 2010, 2021, 2022, and forecast is that it's going upwards. Okay, reaching 6%. Apologies, 6 trillion US dollars. All right, so what we see here, that despite inequality rising, despite the inequality rising, the growth is also rising. So what does the present trend say? That inequality is proportional to growth. Okay, this can be seen directly as per our graphs, that inequality is rising, but the growth is also rising. But can it forever be true? Is it going to be like this forever? Okay, so we need to see. Okay, so let's come here, growth rate versus inequality. So growth rates versus inequality in a low GDP country. So what happens? That when the growth rate is this y-axis and the Gini coefficient is x-axis. So we already talked about Gini coefficient. It basically means inequality. So we see in a low GDP country, as the Gini coefficient or inequality increases, the growth rate goes down. Well, on the other hand, in a high GDP country or in a high GDP scenario, just as India, okay, what do we see? That as the Gini coefficient increases, the growth also increases. Okay, but inequality also increases. So let us see what are the pros and cons of this thing, okay, of the inequality. So one pro we have seen already, that somewhere it leads to economic growth. Somewhere it leads to economic growth. It also leads to expansion of the economy. Expansion in the sense more investment, more businesses, more supply chains. Okay, increasing diversity of the products or the available goods, more and better goods, and so on. Okay, but what are the cons now? There must be some cons also. So one con is the monopoly or monopoly power. Monopoly power and monopoly power amongst capital relative to labor. Okay, more power in the capital than in the labor. Basically, labor holds less value. It becomes replaceable. And the supply side, the people who are producing the goods, the supply side can alter the market. The supply side can alter the market or affect this. So what do we mean with this? Okay, so let's see. These are the economic players of India. These are the billionaires. Okay, so they draw their wealth from monopoly. They draw their wealth from monopoly. Monopoly means that they are only making specific goods in the market. Okay, we'll be seeing by examples also. Now, what they can do, just because they are the sole supplier, they control the supply and they control the supply prices as well as the quantity. Okay, and these people who are rather poor, they do not have the choice to choose the prices. All right, now because of the reduced quantity, they can alter the quantity as well as demand. Okay, and poor people are left with no choice. Okay, because a constant demand at least will always be there. Okay, and they can alter their prices and henceforth derive profit regardless. And henceforth derive profit regardless of the amount of demand by altering the supply. So this is the issue of monopoly, having no choice. That means choice is not there. So this means even if they are having some money, okay, even if their money is increasing, let's say they had 100 rupees earlier and they have 200 rupees now, these people can decide what these people or poor people can do with their money. Okay, let's say they are producing 1 kg of sugar. Okay, now earlier price was 40 rupees. Now it is, let's say, 80 rupees. So their real wage becomes equal even if it becoming 200 rupees from the 100 rupees. Okay, just because these people altered the price. And this would not happen if there was not a monopoly. Somebody was offering the same sugar in 45 rupees. Then these people will go to this person and their real wage will increase. So from here we are introduced to two concepts, which are the money wages as well as the real wages. Okay, so we understood that in a monopoly market, in a just a second, I'll change the pen color. So in a monopoly market, real wages are far lesser than the money wages. Money wages. Okay, so what are these money wages and what is the real wages? What is the definition of these? So money wages are the nominal wages or the amount of a amount paid to a worker, not adjusted for inflation. Okay, it has no relation with inflation. Let's say somebody is getting paid 20,000 rupees. Okay, so they are getting paid 20,000 rupees regardless of the inflation. Every month they are getting 20,000 rupees. Okay, even if the inflation is increasing. And what are the real wages? Real wages is their purchasing power basically, or consumption power. So from this 20,000 rupees, last year they were able to afford something. Okay, now they are able to afford, let's say, thing X, but with adjusted inflation. Let its price was last year it was 1,000 rupees. Okay, this year it is 1,300 rupees. So now 300 rupees extra are going from this wage. So their real wages reduced. Real wages reduced. So what should have happened? They should have been paid as per the inflation, let's say. 20,300 rupees. Let's say overall inflation, they are only purchasing one product. So they should have been paid 20,300 rupees for this real wage to be the same for both the years. Okay. So this is being affected in a monopoly market. Because in a monopoly market, what will happen? That the price of the goods will increase and inflation will increase as per the thinking or demand of the producer itself. So what things keep the price in check? Okay, the demand curve keeps the price in check. If the demand also decreases for something, then the price will also decrease. Okay, because supply will get affected. Now, when the supply is constrained from a single person, from a single industry, single company, then what can happen to demand? Nothing. Okay, so regardless of the demand, they can control the supply itself, and because of this, the real wages become very less. So the poor people are never happy. Okay, regardless of how much ever they earn. So let's see the example of this monopoly in the India. So you can see the top companies here. Okay, let's say the Reliance, the Adani, and so on. ITC, just a second, I'll change the pen color. Okay, so you can see the Reliance here, the ITC here, the HDFC Bank, ICICI Bank. So these are the biggest companies of India. And oftentimes, what is happening, they are producing the same type of goods, market goods. Okay, let's say this HAL. Okay, HAL has 100% of the share in defense. IEX, 95% of the power in trading. 77% in the production of the cigarettes, ITC. Okay, IRCTC 100% in railways. Let's even come to the private companies such as Exceed, 60% in acid batteries. Okay, Delta Corp Limited, 50% in online poker game. Let's say Pidlite, 70% in adhesive. Fevicol is very big. Okay, so if tomorrow Fevicol starts to come, let's say today it is coming for 50 rupees, tomorrow it starts to come for 70 rupees, what will you do? Stop using Fevicol? No. Okay, what option, other option do you have? No other option. So what will you do? Even if it loses, let's say earlier, let's say 50 rupees, 100 customers were purchasing. Okay, now it's 70 rupees, only 80 customers are purchasing. So earlier what the company was earning? 5,000 rupees. Now what the company is earning? 5,600 rupees. Okay, so company is still in profit. Reduction in the customers does not matter to it. So this is the effect of the monopoly. Now let's come to the next concept, that is the cost plus cost into markup. So who decides the markup? The manufacturer decides the markup or the seller decides the markup. Okay, so cost is the production cost. Cost is the production cost. And markup is decided by the seller, that how much up from the cost. Let's say cost is 100 rupees and markup is, let's say, 20 rupees. Okay, so how much profit will be there? On this price, there will be 20 rupees profit. Now the markup is increased by 10 rupees, it becomes 30 rupees. Okay, so now there will be 30 rupees profit or 30% profit. So this is the maths of the markup. Now what happens? That if there is monopoly, if there is monopoly, a single supplier will be able to decide that how much markup should be there on the whole range of product. Let's say 70% of the adhesive. Okay, there are no other options and the markup will be controlled by the single manufacturer. So furthermore, what we see after this, money wage versus real wage, again the same debate. That means even the money wage increases, even if the money wage increases, the real wage decreases. Okay, so measuring wage rate by the amount of money earned tells us the money wage, just simply the money earned. And measuring wage rate by what money will buy is real wage. So this decides the purchasing power. Purchasing power, how much that money can buy today. Okay, real wage is determined by dividing money wage by the consumer price index, CPI, or basically inflation. Inflation. Okay, as the inflation rises, the real wage decreases. The real wage decreases if the money wage remains the same. Okay. For an example, let's say A is equal to B upon C. Okay. So C is inflation here and B is the money wage. A is the real wage. Okay, so let's say this is 5, this is 10, the money wage is 10, and inflation is 2. So real wage is 5, and inflation becomes now 3. Okay, so it becomes 3.33. So for the same money wage, if the inflation increases, then there will be a reduction in the real wages. Alright, so this concept is very, very easy. Now we move to the next concept, that is the greedflation. Okay, very important word for this year. Greedflation means an inflation that is artificially created due to the greed. Okay, greed of the manufacturer or the supplier. Okay, they restrain the supply and create an artificial inflation. They say that market does not have the supply itself, but they are actually the one who is not producing the good itself. Okay, so greedflation is the use of inflation as an excuse to rate prices to artificially high levels in order to increase corporate profits. So such as I told you earlier, okay, they raise the price, and even if the customers, the number of people buying this reduces, they will not go into loss. Okay, so this is known as the greedflation here. Okay, now let's please remember this concept, it will come into play later. This example which I am giving, that even when the price is increased and the number of people are reduced, the company will still make profit. But what will happen to these 20 customers which can now not afford the adhesive which they were able to afford earlier? Okay, this will be a concept we'll be reading later on. Okay, so in the next part only we'll understand this graph, okay, in detail. So because it's a little big graph and has multiple concepts, I'll explain it in the next part with the demand curve, supply curve and all. So for this lecture, you can tell me how, what is your feedback. Okay, please tell me in the comment section. We'll see you in the next part. Thank you very much. This is Yatharth here signing off. Have a great day ahead. See you soon.